when I start to get those thoughts in my head. You're not good enough. You're going to fail. Give up. Why even bother? I've now been able, from a Christian standpoint, to identify that's not God.
I need to be around people who encourage me, affirm me, don't criticize me, don't critique me, judge me. And that is important to identify what you actually need.
I try to talk to that little Kevin, be like, Kevin, you're loved. You're a good person. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. You're going to still be loved. And if people are not going to love you because you make a mistake, then those aren't the kind of people that probably should be in my life anyway.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Primal Question podcast. I'm Mike Foster, your fearless host, where we just talk about things that are about really our needs and emotional fitness and understanding our core drivers in terms of our life. And really the goal of the podcast is just to turn up the lights a little bit on our lives and blow away some of the fog so that we can flourish and thrive and get everything we possibly can out of life. And so today we're going to talk about question 6, primal question number 6, am I good enough? And I'm joined by my friend, Kevin. Good to see you, Kevin.
Good to see you too.
So question 6, am I good enough? Now, first of all, how did you, I know the story of how you learned about your question, but we were together at a workshop and I was kind of unpacking the whole concept. And your question was, am I good enough?
Right.
Do you remember this moment? Or is this
totally.
Like, okay.
I can remember it like it was yesterday. So, because you were listing them.
Yes.
And I'm like, no.
Not me.
And then as soon as you hit, am I good enough? It just hit me like Mike Tyson, just bam. I'm like, that's me. I didn't even have to think about it. It resonated with my soul immediately.
Yeah.
You know?
What, and that's the fun thing about the model is like, when I go through the questions, like, people will have a very visceral response to the one that, to their particular question. So talk to me about the imprint. How did that question get embedded in Kevin? And again, we talk about kind of the early imprints from our childhood. How did that question start for you?
So my earliest recollection is when my mom and dad got divorced when I was 7 years old. And I'll never forget, I'm trying to get emotional, but we were in the courtroom. And I don't know why my mom had my brother and I in the courtroom. I was 7 years old. My brother was 4. He doesn't remember this, but I do. And the judge, we were sitting in the courtroom. My mom told us to be quiet. And the judge, it was the final day. And the judge asked my dad about custody. And my mom and my dad looked the judge in the eye and he said, I don't want him. She could have the kids. And I just remember that first thing come to my mind, why doesn't he want me? You know, and so right there, I didn't know that but now I know back right there, that's where it was planted. I took it as if I were a better son, or I was good enough to be his son, he would have put up a fight and would want me, you know. And then as I progressed through childhood, my mom did her best my dad took off. He never paid child support. There were times we thought he was dead because the government, the IRS couldn't find him. He wasn't filing tax returns. Wow. They couldn't find my father. And so it made life very hard for my mom. She never went to college. This was in the 70s. Women weren't really going to school yet back then. I don't mean to sound sexist. It was women. My mom became a housewife. And so she had to go out into the workforce and get jobs and to pay the mortgage and make sure my brother and I had food. And our family pitched in, and then as soon as I was old enough to start making money, I would do jobs and give my mom the money, and I did stuff like that. But my mom is a woman; she couldn't be a dad, so she did her best to try to teach me what it is to be a man, but ultimately you can't. That's a father's job. Just like it's not as being a dad now, I can't teach my daughter how to be a woman, right? And then my mom met her next husband, who was extremely abusive, verbally, physically, emotionally, and would always, any accomplishments that I would get, he would downplay them and let me know that there was somebody better. I was a runner. I was a state champion. It doesn't matter. There's somebody faster. There's somebody smarter. There's somebody, and it was like, it was just, and so I just realized that my whole life I have continued to try to prove myself. And my mom has since passed away, and my stepfather has passed away, and my real father have passed away. But I still have found, before I even met you, I was still trying to prove myself to people who were dead. And boy, is it exhausting.
Do you feel like if somebody would have come alongside and obviously that traumatic moment in the courtroom and just that experience, I'm usually those types of experiences are in HD clarity, right? You could recall them. It's such a powerful imprint of sort of being dismissed and not feeling valued, not feeling good enough, rejected, all of that. Do you see how, if that question was answered with a yes or affirmed, or if maybe that event didn't happen, how life would be different for you in terms of how the primal question has influenced how you just see everything?
Yeah. It's a tough one, because I wonder, I've used that to motivate me to get all this success I've had in life. But boy, I wonder if somebody would have back then said to me, pull me aside, whether it be my mom or even my dad might have clarified, hey, I love you. I'm just not ready to have you to be a father, and would have explained it to me maybe that way instead of just goodbye and peace out. Maybe I think it would have been different. I definitely think it would have been a little bit different, but I also then wonder where I would have got my motivation from. So basically, I think I turned a really negative thing into a way to propel me to the successes that I had. And I've had my failures, but I really wonder, sometimes I wonder, well, what if that wouldn't have happened? What if my dad said, yeah, and I would have had an involving dad? Would I have been as motivated now to accomplish the things I accomplished? It's kind of a weird thing.
Really, to me, it's like, out of our pain, out of our wounds, out of our traumatic experiences does birth something that can be leveraged and something that can be become a gift that we almost like, I refer to it as like a superpower, where pain becomes purpose and suffering becomes a strength that we carry in our lives. So talk to me, we talk about the scramble, and the scramble is all the ways what we do when somebody answers our primal question with a no,
right,
or a maybe. We just don't get a clear yes about our value and worth and feeling good enough. What does your scramble look like?
Oh, it gets ugly fast. If anybody wants to put me in a scramble, all they got to do is say to me, you can't do it. I don't think you can do it. Or flat out just tell me you're just not good enough to do it. And, as you know, I'm a mortgage lender. I'm a broker. I've been doing it for 32 years. And so I have a reputation for just not taking no for an answer. I believe that if you look hard enough, you try hard enough, you work hard enough, I will find a way to get the deal done. And unfortunately, that's a great thing, but it's also a negative thing, because in my pursuit to get that done, I've ticked off a lot of underwriters and a lot of people like, my God, this guy just doesn't quit. And so like I said, positive, negative, but on the flip side, like I mentioned earlier, it gets exhausting, because if I somehow can't do it, even though I've done everything I possibly can, and even the people might say, thank you for trying so hard, I feel like a failure. I couldn't figure out how to get this done for them. And so I go into the scramble, and I go into I am a Christian, and I go into God is punishing me. And I know that's not what he's doing, but that's the story I start playing in my mind. God doesn't want me to have this. God likes watching me suffer. And nothing could be further from the truth. I go to Bible studies and all this stuff, and I know that that's not the truth, but that's the story that my brain immediately wants to go into. God wants to see you struggle. He doesn't want anything to be easy for you, Kevin. Your whole life is meant to be a struggle. And we know that's not true, but that's where I go. And before I met you, that's where I would stay for a long period of time. But because of the tools you're giving me, I still go into it, but I can actually now realize I'm in the scramble, and I can pull myself out a lot faster than I used to.
Totally. I remember, well, I wrote about you in my book, Seven Primal Questions. Thanks for letting me share part of your story. And I remember we were doing this exercise about what is the first line of your story. And in that workshop, I just, to talk about HD clarity about moments, I remember when we were doing that exercise with you and we were just kind of going around the group, your first line of the story was, things just don't work out for me.
Right. Yep.
That somehow God or the universe or society or the world, like it's set up for Kevin not to win, for Kevin, for not to work out for Kevin. And we talked about how powerful that first line of the story and how it really sets the tone for the things. And so much of that is informed by the question of, am I good enough? And what I love is that you're now aware of, okay, my mind or my brain or my thoughts say it's not going to work out for me. God's here to punish me. How do you bring yourself from that sort of mindset or that belief system that, again, has been with you for a very long time because of the early childhood imprints around your value and worth? How do you coach yourself up saying, no, that is not the first line of my story. That is not true of, God's hand on my life. What do you do? What are the practical things that you do?
Well, what I do now is when I start to get that, those thoughts in my head, you're not good enough. You're going to fail, give up. Why even bother? I've now been able, from a Christian standpoint, identify that's not God. God doesn't say things like that. So who can it be? Then I know it's Satan. It's the devil. And so what I am able to do for me is immediately, when that starts to happen, I immediately will remind myself, maybe it's time to connect again. And I will usually step away and will just sit in silence for a few minutes and just talk to the Lord and realize that this isn't true. I know who I am. I know that God sees me as I'm flawed, but God sees me. I try to remember what God sees, how God sees me. And that's whose really opinion should only count. And years ago, that's not where I was. Now I'm just like, okay, I'm going to make mistakes and nobody is perfect. We all know that, right? And there's going to be times where I just can't win. I'm going to exhaust all the possibilities in my job and I'm going to have to tell the client, I can't help you. It doesn't make me a failure. It doesn't make them a bad client. That's just the fact. That's the situation. And I've learned that I gotta stop taking that personally because you know this from our things. I take everything personally. Everything is an attack on Kevin.
Very common with this question to take
right?
Everything's your fault. Yeah. You're the reason why everything's going wrong. Very common.
Exactly. Underwriter must not like me. If my name went on this loan approval, it would be approved. But because it's Kevin Monahan, the underwriter doesn't like me. Yes. These are the crazy stories. I laugh about it now, but that's been my life for 50 years. Of nobody likes me, everybody hates me. I'm going to eat some worms, right? I mean. That's pretty much how I've lived my life. That the world's just stacked against you. They don't want to see you succeed. And obviously, after meeting you and reading the book and having therapy with you, I realized that's just a bunch of lies. It's not true. Now I'm not going to say that it still doesn't every once in a while seep in, but at least now I'm a lot more cognizant of when it's happening to snap out of it quickly and not stay in that spot for a long period of time.
Well, it's interesting when you're describing kind of the messaging around this question and the thoughts like nobody likes me, it's all my fault. That is such a perfect example of the kid logic that we talk about, that those messages are kid messages. Like they're so simplistic and they're so they sound like a kid trying to understand pain and trying to understand why things are going wrong, or try to understand that court scene. Why would their dad seek to never want to engage them again? And it's like those simple messages are Hey friend, you and I have a hidden force driving our lives. It drives our choices, our behaviors, our triggers, our relationships, and even our strengths and our gifts. And most of us have no idea what it is or how to control it. And this hidden force is an unmet emotional need. There are 7 of them, and I call them the 7 primal questions. And when you don't know your primal question, it can wreak havoc on your life because people will do whatever it takes to meet this need. And we can even try to meet that need in some pretty unhealthy ways. But when you identify your core emotional need, a lot of things begin to make sense. And you'll have the clarity to meet emotional needs for yourself and others in much healthier ways that have far-reaching effects on your life and your relationships. Take 5 minutes to discover your primal question today at primalquestion.com. The kid logic that has to be challenged, because when we use kid logic to solve adult problems, we're going to have a problem.
Right.
So you have these kid logic messages. What are the healthy adult messages or reminders that you use to remind yourself of your worth, that you are good enough? Obviously your faith is incredibly important in this, but what are the new messages that you have found helpful to you versus life doesn't work out for me? Nobody likes me. I'm a failure. What have you replaced those messages with, or what are the new themes or words that you speak over your life?
Well, we changed my first sentence, remember, to I'm not good enough, or that the world is against me, or, as you put it, to now we've reversed that I am good enough and I am loved,
yes,
and liked, and I am successful, and that's my new first line of my sentence, of my story. But when things start to go awry, the things I now try to keep in mind is when, like you said, to negate those other stories as a child, but now the stories I tell myself as an adult, or the things I remember, is with my job, I keep them, and I keep them handy. I have people that have written me personal notes thanking me for what I've done. And so I keep them handy to read when, as a kind of like a lifesaver, when I'm starting to feel that wait a minute, hold on, and read something somebody wrote me. I've also done, I think the thing is the company I keep too. I've done a much better job. I think I'm surrounding myself with people who lift me up, rather than try to tear me down. Because I believe there are people out there that do that. I don't know whether they do it on purpose or not. I definitely believe that there are some people that don't want to see you succeed because they're not succeeding. So the company you keep is very important. And, you and I have talked about it. I try to talk to that little Kevin, and just be like, Kevin, you're loved. You're a good person. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. You're going to still be loved. And if people are not going to love you or are not going to like you because you make a mistake or whatever, well, then those aren't the kind of people that probably should be in my life anyway.
Yes.
Right. And, so my sphere of influence, so to speak, people like you, my Bible study gentlemen, the guys like that, the people I'm hanging around with, I've noticed, especially with what's going on in my life right now, it's helped me getting through a really difficult time that I'm going through right now.
So smart. I mean, I think what I love about that is you recognize the need that you have, and you're owning that need. Say, listen, I need to be around people who encourage me, affirm me, don't criticize me, don't, critique me, judge me.
Right.
And that is so important to identify what you actually need. So like a Q6 very much revolves around affirmation and encouragement. Okay. So the more that you can do that in terms of the people that you hang around with, by the way, I love that quote. I forget who says it, but we are the average of the 5 people that we hang around the most.
Right.
So as you upgrade the people around you. And I'm not like in a judgment way, like some people are better than others,
Yeah, right.
but in terms of those influences, they do matter.
Yes.
So I love that you're being very strategic about, okay, listen, this group of people brings me down, or I feel less than for whatever reason. But when I'm around these friends, I'm feeling built up and affirmed. I think it's really smart. Do you, one of the things that comes with every primal question comes this primal gift. And one of the things, and I'm going to affirm you now and encourage you, one of the things, the way the primal gift works is we take our primal question and we put it over everybody else and we assume they're asking the same thing. Am I good enough?
Right.
And then we work really hard to answer that question with a yes, their question. And so one of the things that you do really well, you actually handled, you did one of my loans, and you're so good at encouraging and affirming others. And kind of the way that works, at least what the research shows, is that the thing that we need most in our own life is a thing that we naturally give away to others. And so as your friend and just being on the journey with you, I see you so often just valuing others in a really significant way and trying to be helpful and encouraging and affirming. Like I get notes from you. I get these little cards, and they're just, I'm like, who does this? Who sends cards and notes just because? And I just like, that is just such a beautiful expression of the Q6-ness in you, of valuing others. Talk to me about that and just kind of how you see other relationships through the lens of your own primal question, or really your primal gift.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, the note thing, yeah, I've been doing, the note thing wasn't even really my idea. It came to me 20 years ago when I got into a coaching program from Brian Buffini. He's a real estate coaching company here in Carlsbad. And he wrote about the effect of the personal note, about it, because what is the one thing that no matter if you're black or white, Hispanic, rich, poor, wherever in the world, what's the one thing we all have the same amount of? Time. We all get 24 hours and not a second more, right? In a day. And he said, so when you write a personal note to somebody, it doesn't even have to be Shakespearean, right? You're just telling somebody what they mean to you or how grateful you are. The lingering effect it has on them is they know that you're busy, and the fact that you took time out to write a note means a lot to them.
That's exactly what I think. I'm like, he took time out of his day to write this little note. By the way, Kevin, Q6, I am not a Q6. I am a Q1. My primal question is, am I safe? I have never written anybody a note. Okay. It doesn't even cross my mind to encourage and affirm that way through this taking time out of your day to write a card. It's just such a gift that you give to people when you do that.
Now, here's a shocker. You could do the math. I don't know what it is, but I've written 5 notes a day for 20 years. So you could figure out how many notes I've written in the last 20 years. 5 a day. I put them on my computer. So before I open my laptop, I would have to actually physically remove the notes. Otherwise they're going to fall on the floor. So I write my 5 notes first to start my day, because what a way to start your day. You're starting your day in an attitude of gratitude.
Yes.
So whatever comes next, at least I've got gratitude to combat it. If it's going to be bad news, I'm already in a good place of mind to combat what might be coming that I'm not going to like. I'm not trying to be a pessimist, but in my job, there's a lot of stuff that happens that we're not ready for. But if I can attack it with coming from a place of gratitude, it's probably going to help me prevent me from also going into that scramble. And so I just enjoy writing the notes. I can't tell how many times I do it, because I want people to know how I feel about them and that I am grateful. But I can't tell how many times
I value people. You want them to know how much you value them.
Right. And I can't tell how many times I've gotten emails or phone calls. I got your note today. I don't know how you knew, but that's exactly what I needed to hear today. And that warms my heart, and and I don't do it because I'm trying to get more business from them. I really, truly do it because I want them to know I appreciate you. And doing that. And then, one of the things that I think is I have a master's degree in coaching. I got it. I haven't really put it to use, but one of the things I've always loved to do is coach youth sports, and coach from a place of love And I think when people see me coach, they're a little shocked because you're not going to see me I don't lose my, you know what, on the court. I coach basketball and I used to coach football. Basketball is my passion to coach basketball, but I would coach my son. And one of the things I learned was from John Wooden, who coached at UCLA. And he used the thing called the sandwich approach. And I actually use that in everything in life. And that is when his basketball players made a mistake, he coached Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Walton, Gail Goodrich. Okay. Kareem would make a mistake instead of losing his, you know what, and throwing chairs and doing the Bobby Knight routine, right?
Styles,
yeah, right. He would actually pull them aside. He would give them a compliment at what they're doing well. Yeah. Then he would give them the corrective action, and then he would give them another compliment. He called it the sandwich approach. Yes. So I took that concept, and when I would coach children, you know, I'm coaching these kids where I started coaching Zach at 7 till he was 18. So from 7 to 18, I would coach children that way. They make a mistake, I give them a compliment, the constructive feedback, and a compliment. I would never scream at them. I would never embarrass them in front of their teammates. And one of the coolest things is in these leagues, we were given our rosters. You didn't have tryouts. They tried to make all the teams equally fair. The kids had to try out from skills. And then the league would be like, you get this one, you get this one. So they would try to stack the team so it was competitive. And from 7 to 18, my son's basketball teams either got first or second place. Could be lucky, I don't know. But one of the things I think it was is I know there were some games we won that we shouldn't have won, but these kids played together because they could play fearless because they knew their coach, if he made a mistake, wasn't going to. They took chances.
Yeah, they didn't play in fear.
No,
they played in confidence.
Playing confidence, and you know, it got to the point where one year the head of the league called me and said, "We have a problem." I said, "What's the matter? What did I do wrong?" He's like, "You didn't do anything wrong."
Wasn't that interesting? What did I do wrong?
That's what I said. I said, "What did I do wrong?" I went right to there. It's what's good enough, right? So what did I do wrong? He's like, "It's not what you did wrong. It's what you're doing right, but we're having a problem." I said, "What's the problem?" He's like, "Well, you know, in our league, the parents are allowed to request a coach as long as it doesn't shift the competitiveness of the league. We'll accommodate it." I said, "Okay, what's the problem?" He's like, "We have 37 requests for you to be the coach, and you can only put 10 kids on your team." and he's rattling off these people. I don't even know them. I actually knew 2 of them because I had coached their kids before. I didn't know the rest. But what had happened is these teams I coached against, the other parents saw the way I was coaching my kids and wanted me to coach their kids that way. And so,
and do you see how this all flows from your need to feel valued and good enough?
I do now.
Okay, yeah.
Back then I didn't know. I just felt it was just inherently, I just felt that's the way I would have liked to have been coached. Because when I played sports, I didn't have crazy coaches that would scream and yell at us. They weren't doing it in the sandwich approach, but I never feared my coach. I respected my coach, but I never had coaches that went ballistic on me until I got to high school. Then that was a different story. But youth sports, I always had coaches who preached, let's have fun. Yeah. You guys are kids. Let's have fun and if we win, we win. If we lose, you lose. And they always encouraged me, you know? And so, but now as we see these on television and YouTube, geez, coaches are screaming at 9-year-old kids. Of course they're going to make mistakes. They're 9 years old, you know? And a really crazy stat I learned was 75% in America, 75% of children by the time they hit age 16 will quit playing sports. The number one reason was abusive coaching. And the number 2, here's a number 2 one, parents. The parents putting too much expectations on their kid. Everybody thinks their kid's the next Michael Jordan. Yeah. You know, and I ran into that.
Well, I just love how you're combating that and bringing just, again, your primal gift, the thing that you needed as a kid, the thing that worked for you in terms of when you were playing, the encouragement, the affirmation, and obviously you're putting it into coaching and sports, but also in your work and this kind of just how you show up in the world of saying, how can I affirm and encourage somebody today? And it's just such a beautiful expression of how that pain from our past and those early child imprints of feeling not good enough have really been a catalyst for you bringing so much goodness to others and encouragement. And I love that. Kevin, thank you for being you. Thanks for being my friend. Thanks for
You're
doing
welcome.
this. And thank you for just sharing about your primal question today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Primal Question podcast. I hope you've learned something new about your primal question, or maybe the primal question of someone you know. If you think this episode would be helpful to a friend, I encourage you, please share it. Let people know about the podcast and how it's impacted you by sending a link to a friend. If you're ready to take the next step in your own self-discovery journey, I invite you to visit primalquestion.com/podcast. That's primalquestion.com/podcast for additional free resources and to explore the opportunity to work one-on-one with a Primal Question coach. Also, for those of you who feel a calling to guide others on their journey, there's information available about how you can become a certified Primal Question coach yourself. It's a powerful way to transform lives, including your own.